This is Katie Walker coming from today's podcast, Rethink with Revitalist, and we're here to change the narrative on mental health. Let's talk Lion's Brain. So this is their new proprietary blend that's most healthy for your brain. So if you're looking for decreased symptoms of depression, decreased symptoms of anxiety, you want more energy, this is a great supplement. So it's all natural, has all organic products in it, B vitamins, magnesium, and then a whole surplus of anti-inflammatory mushrooms, all legal, and it helps to optimize your brain health. So check out Lion's Brain. So today I'm here with an accomplished leader, Ben, who's the founder and CEO of Pyure Brands.
Yeah.
So Ben, thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
And we were having some talks right before about feeling broken.
Feeling broken.
Yeah.
I don't know if the shirt, I should feel good about the shirt.
I think you look amazing in your shirt.
Thank you. Is it too much collar? Is it more like porn 70s shirt or
I think
kid
it's
shirt?
a statement that you don't even have to talk. Your shirt speaks for you.
Yeah.
And that's a compliment.
Thank you. We were just talking about how Instagram just finds you the most ridiculous clothes and somehow you buy it every time. And if you don't want it, it keeps coming around. You're like, fuck it, I'll just do it. I'll get it. Fine.
Well, I think, what you were talking about earlier, because we're both parents. Your little boy's
3.5.
3.5?
Almost 4.
Okay.
Almost 4, yeah.
And my daughter's 14.
Yeah, wow.
And and when, and we're both, working towards this leadership of business development to where most of the world probably looks at us and most days probably looks at us and think, oh, they've got it all together.
Yeah, no.
And no.
Yeah. And down at the coffee, making coffee, and I look at you and I'm like, I think I need ketamine.
Where am I? What am I doing?
Where am I? What am I doing?
Yep.
Am I good? Am I not good? But I think ultimately we're good. It's just tiring.
Well, not only that, but I think we all go through life and we feel that way, when we're hitting these periods of transition, right? And we all transition in life, good, bad, or ugly, we transition.
Yeah.
But I think we get to the point to where you have that, what state of life am I in?
Yeah.
And I think that's what Erickson's theories and things where you have the reflection back, have I done all these right steps? And so now, being in our 40s, it's like looking out, right, to when we're in our 70s and 80s and 90s, if we make it that long.
Correct.
And really having, looking back and saying, did I do what I was intended to do? Because right now we have the ability to change it if we want to. When we're in our 90s, we're stuck with whatever choices we made those first 90 years because
it's
more
tough.
than likely we can't go and start a multi-million-dollar business when we're in our 90s.
I mean, but why could we? Could we?
Yeah, probably with psychedelics. We'll have more psychedelics at that time.
It depends on your
more functional mushrooms.
What if it's your biological age? If you're 90 but you're really 40?
We'll be 90 and we'll be building companies with virtual reality through our brains.
I agree. Or you're just or your avatar AI will just build it.
I did.
And you just sit there and you're just blinking your eyes and you're like, it's gonna build itself.
Yeah.
So maybe it just does.
You're right. Yeah.
Who knows?
So I've become an avatar AI, which is kind of cool. So all the science guys right there, these elite scientists, and they just validated my scale. Have I talked about my scale?
No, tell me about the scale. Tell me about the scale.
Oh, you're going to like this. I like it. So hopefully you'll like it.
Tell me.
So, people in the ketamine space, right? They would come to me, what's your diagnosis? Depression. Okay, here's a depression scale so we can measure your outcomes. So we give you the scale. Well, depression's not changing, but you are. So we were like, okay, what is this, right? So then we started including 4 scales. So depression, anxiety, trauma, and suicidality. We included those 4 scales. And then we started seeing all these changes. So I didn't really care what their pre-existing diagnosis was because it's an opinion for the most part, right? We don't have that standardized per se. Usually it's wrong.
Yeah.
So they come in, they have the 4 scales that we would send them. Well, then people are like, why do I have to take 50 questions? I'm like, well, because we're seeing all these things change. So gave them the 50 questions for a while. And then I created Revitalist's scale, which I'll tell you why. One of the big reasons I love it. But I sat down and I came up with the most 5 consistent questions that overlap actually 6 conditions. So they overlap insomnia, suicidality, PTSD, anxiety, insomnia, and pain. So each question is on a spectrum. And the references, so one of the questions actually is, do you find, on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being none, 10 being the most, how would you rank your value in your current life purpose? And that question alone actually is the most predictable, sensitive question on the mental health scale.
Interesting.
It used to be age, and this question actually topped age.
Wow.
So yeah.
So how do most people answer it? From
I don't know.
experience?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I understand patterns. I can assess people really well. That's one of my good skill sets. So I made that. I gave it to the scientists. And when I tell you I gave it to these scientists, these guys are, MDs, PhDs, Yale, Harvard, Penn Medicine. Like, guys, when you sit down in a room, you might as well be an ant as compared to the intellectual ability.
Down? Like, walk me through that. How do they break it down?
How'd they break it? How'd they validate it?
So you give that information. How do they validate it?
Right. I don't know. I mean, like, I'm like, you all tell me. So there's all these different scales, right? So there's one called like the Likert scale. So there's certain scales to where it looks at the p-values, the statistical significance and such to predict the predictability and the sensitivity. And there's a range that shows. So it has to be at least in the range to show that it's a valid question. Most of the questions that I had, they weren't only valid, they actually peaked above that. So like for depression specifically, I think it was like 98% conclusive in predicting depression.
No kidding.
5 questions. So the 5 questions connects 5 diagnoses.
Wow.
And the beautiful thing about this, they validated it with almost 12,000 people. So I have a 31-page paper that's sitting in a draft to be published, hopefully internationally. And what it will do is that scale will trump the depression scale, the anxiety scale, the trauma scale. It's actually more predictive than all of these individual scales.
That's incredible.
But the beautiful thing about this is, what did I just do? I was able to make a scale for psychedelics. Because think about it. Psychedelic medicine is like, right now in the FDA, you have to have one scale that proves one indication, right? So with MDMA that just got shot down, they are trying to prove it for PTSD.
Okay.
The scale that I just made validates that all 5 of these things exist in the same space. So it's one.
Interesting.
So all 5 make one.
So basically it just morphs it all in one and it makes it easier for
So if you wanted to make pharmaceutical drugs, then you use this scale. You validate this scale with the drugs that you're making. And then that's how you get FDA regulation, right?
Wow.
So anyway, so the cool thing is, the really cool thing, well, I mean, I guess it's cool that I created the scale that's really awesome.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, it is a big deal. And I've been called an idiot a lot over the scale, which makes it even bigger, right? Yeah. Because they're like, I had one lady, amazing, who was like, no, you can't just make up 5 questions, and do a scale. Yeah. And they're like, usually you make up 3,000 questions, you test those, and then you break it down, and then you test those, and you break it down. I was like, no, but it's these 5 questions. Like, these are the 5 things I basically ask people in a consult, and they're consistently consistent. And she still didn't believe me. But when they wanted to change my 5 questions, I was like, please don't touch my 5 questions. Like, these are my 5 questions. And I know that they're consistent. It's a pattern. It's science.
How long did it take you to like really break down that those were the exact questions that you
Not long.
No.
Not like 4 hours.
Oh.
Yeah, no, not long.
So this wasn't like years and years and years of research that
this was me being in the ketamine space. No, this is me being in the ketamine space from 2018 until I created the scale at the end of 2021. And it was me talking to people and in my head saying, what the hell is your brain doing?
Right.
Not the person, right?
Yeah.
What is your brain doing? What patterns does it have? So that's when, and I wrote my book just recently and things like that too. But that's what kind of led to my whole neurologic theory is, and it's kind of like what you're saying, like I feel broken. It's like when we're transitioning in life, good, bad, or ugly, good days, bad days, whatever. Our brain likes categorization and prioritization. And sometimes life just feels like a lot. It's like, okay, I should just go lay out, look at the sun, look at the beach, whatever, right? And just take a break. But one thing I noticed, like with people specifically, what are my questions? One of the questions is, like I told you, is the highest ranking one. Do you find value in your current life purpose? That's a huge question. Huge.
Right.
One of the other questions is, how would you rank your daily motivation? Another one is, which a lot of people are like, this question doesn't even make sense, Katie. And I was like, no, it does. Like, so one of them is, do you feel like you can slow the speed of thoughts if asked? And a lot of people don't understand that question. But what happens, right, that I've seen this across the spectrum, is people's thoughts start getting out of control and they don't know how to control them. Adolescents' thoughts, they go so fast, they don't know how to clear their mind.
How much of that is the environment? And I'll follow that up with like social media.
100%.
If you have a kid that's just scrolling all day, information, you know.
Not only is it social
activity.
media, it's the school systems. It's homework. It's everything push. And I ask people all the time, who taught you to be peaceful and calm? Nobody. We expect that it's normal and we expect that it's common, and it's not.
That's really interesting. And, as I've transitioned as a parent, as a husband, as, obviously a father, that's a lot of that's the angst of the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of different phases just watching your kid as they grow. I don't want to say a lot of angst comes with that, but you just don't know. And as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, like, you want to control.
Yes.
And there's that space of like, I want to surrender. And you're trying to make the best decisions for your family. And with all this chaos, with all this noise everywhere, and, school's a big thing. Like, when we were kids, you just go to school. You're not thinking about what are they teaching you, or do you have to worry about, someone coming in with a gun and security? Like, these are real crazy conversations that we're consistently having. That's a real thing. Hence why I'm highly considering moving to Costa Rica. It's real, it's
no internet, no phones, just trees and monkeys.
Just trees and monkeys. Like, and however this politics turns out, one way or another, we're still, I don't want to say doomed, because maybe that's a little bit too harsh, but we just don't know.
Right.
And if this person gets into power, like, how's the education system going to turn from there? Who's really peeling back layers, as it's super important, what they're teaching our kids.
Yep. Yeah. No, you're right. And that's the piece of it. It's like that angst aspect and learning. I don't know. I mean, maybe when you feel broken, if you don't feel like you're in anything, it's like maybe you are truly living in the present moment.
Yeah.
Because you're not predicting the past, you're not predicting the future. You're just at one with. And from an entrepreneur, that's a huge piece. You're just like, all right, I'm going to make the best decision that I can make at the current time and hope that it works out. And I tell people that, this is going to take a big swing, but I think it should be said. We get a lot of women who have had abortions previously, and they not only hate themselves. It's much deeper than hate of themselves, and forgiveness is, they can't, right? And I always talk to them. I'm like, listen, like, when you were in that situation 20, 40, 50 years ago, right, you made the best decision for yourself at that time with the consideration to everything around you.
Right.
And we do that, I know abortion's a big piece to talk about, but there's so many people that I deal with that. But, we do that every day in our life. As a parent, we make the best decision that we think at that time for ourselves, for our children, for our family members, whatever else, right?
Yep.
And we have to have the ability to grow, move on, and expect that good, bad, or ugly, that's a decision we're going to have to live with.
And it's not always going to be perfect.
It's not always going to be perfect.
Yes.
And we've got to have grace, for ourselves, and forgiveness for ourselves. And again, nobody teaches us how to do that.
Right. And do you think, with our DNA, with how, our innate ability to how we're used to living, like all this new information in real time and fast movement, like it is playing a role on our anxiety and our kids' anxiety.
Yeah.
And like, how do you take a step back and just say, all right, well, how do I reboot? How do I reboot for my kids? I mean, we've already seen the last 10, 20 plus years, the impact it's caused on you know, on children and even adults, from anxiety to depression to, you know, not feeling like you're enough or you're not doing enough. Yep. It's like manufactured anxiety. And at the end of the day, like, we're just two people down there having coffee and we're good. Right. Bills are getting paid. We're fine.
Right. Yeah. Low expectations, high serenity.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you know, so my piece, right? And when I hear people, I'm like, they're like, take kids' phones away, take all this stuff away. And I'm like, okay, we need to teach them the skill sets for when they have those things, right? Yeah. Because that also, you know, rebellion, right? I was super rebellious. Like, go ahead and take it away from me, you know, when I was a kid. And I'll show you, you know? But there's a piece of the brain, or there's a network in the brain, and I love this network. It's called the salience network. And the salience network actually has shown that there's strengths and there's weaknesses. So me personally, I think starting in kindergarten, going all the way through, we should talk about the salience network and break it down on little tiny levels. So it's like, if you can't categorize and prioritize thoughts correctly, there's usually a weakness in your salience network. So the salience network is what categorizes and prioritizes. And you have to think, you have these skills, I have these skills. For most part, you know, every day we do, because we have to.
Right.
To where we can prioritize, you know, tasks that are going to be done shorter versus longer periods of times. A lot of people, when their salience network has a weakness in it, they'll go get medicated, right, for that with their salience network. The medication does not improve the strength of your salience network. So therefore, you'll see people, a lot of times, they can't get out of bed. So society usually says, oh, it's because they're depressed. Does that person feel depressed? Sure, absolutely. But usually the reason they can't get out of bed is not depression. It's overwhelming anxiety.
Interesting. So
think about it, right? So if they're laying in bed, like, I wake up, I don't know the first step to take. Like, I can't even take a shower. Like, I just don't know. Like, I can't put these life's tasks in order. So
they're anxious around the steps. They're anxious around.
They don't have the skill set to do it anymore. And they just lay in bed because it's safety. And that's one thing I see, like, with couples a lot of times. Like, say that one partner's doing well, the other one's not. So we're doing the consult on the other one that's not doing well.
Right.
They've lost the ability to trust themselves. So, you know, it'd be like, all right, Ben, what do you want to do?
Right.
And you would look at your wife and be like, I don't know. What do you think I should do? So you're giving all your control, because you don't trust yourself anymore to have any control. So you're giving all of that onto your partner. Kind of like the Matthew Perry piece, right? That's actually a huge piece. So Matthew Perry's situation, he trusted people that were meant to protect him, and they took advantage of him. He trusted people that were the closest to him. He trusted providers that were ethically supposed to take care of him, and they all abused him and took advantage of him, you know? And unfortunately, that's what happens in the mental health space, is people become vulnerable. They don't trust themselves. They want to trust others. They put their trust on others. And when they put that trust on others, we should guard that with our lives, right? That trust of people. And unfortunately, it doesn't always happen that way.
Yeah, that's too bad.
Yeah, it does. And then it gives ketamine a bad name, which ketamine, we're going to rename ketamine to like some type of, we're not going to call it the spirit molecule, but we'll call it some type of molecule.
And that's what we were talking about. It's like your blood, sweat, and tears into this medicine, into this healing process. And, you know, there's this Netflix documentary about Matthew Perry, and people are going to watch it real time. And that's what they're going to get from ketamine, that this is a street drug and that's unfortunate because of all the hard work that you're putting into it. You know, it will pass.
It will, you know, I mean,
but it doesn't make it easier for you.
No,
right?
It doesn't. Right? I'm going to like layer up more, like
you're
more
like
my armor.
You're dealing with like NASA and like these brilliant scientists, and but what about Matthew Perry? But what about Matthew Perry?
You're right.
It's friends. Fuck, man. You're right.
You know, they should be making a documentary on, though, not with ketamine, with Matthew Perry, but with how abuse occurs in healthcare systems. Because,
big time.
Especially in mental health, like.
Well, who's the drug dealer here?
What, with them?
Who's keeping Matthew Perry sick?
Right. No, yeah, you're right. It was the physicians who had access to ketamine, who were the drug dealers, right?
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. Or it's the people, and I guess, no, I didn't know this. in the medical field, we're not allowed. So ethically speaking, I'm not allowed to ask you anything. If you come in and you're in 4-point shackles and you have 4 guards with you, I cannot ask you why you have those. I'm not ethically allowed to do that because it could impede the way I'm going to treat you as a patient, right? So when you come in, person's a person's a person. That's the way we're taught in the medical field, right? And unfortunately, that's probably why we become such like machines, because we're not becoming attached to your personality. We don't care. We're there to fix your heart, fix your brain, fix your kidneys, whatever we need to do. Therapists, on the other hand, become involved with the person that you are or the values that you have, different things like that. So it's much more of a personal value. So I didn't see this in the medical field, even though I'm sure it happened. I didn't see it ever. But when I came out of the medical field into the mental health space, I had no idea how often ethics became skewed with mental health, to where there's patients sleeping with therapists, there's psychiatrists sleeping with patients.
How common is that?
It's very common. Which when I first heard it, I was like, like I almost got blown away,
like
right?
Just crossing that line, or?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's power, right? Because it's interesting, because I've put a lot of my friends to sleep for surgery because it's trusting.
Yeah.
So I put them to sleep, which it is kind of nervous when you're literally paralyzing your friend. You're putting in, a tube down to breathe for him. But you're the ultimate protector with that. Therapists can't do therapy on each other because of power. So if you're truly aligned from a therapeutic means with ethics, you have to be aware that you can always hold power over someone.
Right.
If you're aware of that, then it's intended that doesn't happen. But they're very clear on ethical guidelines. If people in my company want to be treated with ketamine, they cannot be treated by anyone who they're in a chain of command with.
Interesting.
Because you have to be very well aware of that. And usually, we'll make it to where it's somebody who's with the company, but they're not aligned through any of those pieces.
So where would they go, and how do they get treated?
They can, So they can go to the same clinics and things. They just can't be they can't be in the same department per se.
I got it.
Or they'll go to a different clinic, or we'll send them somewhere else. But that's something big time that we have to think of.
Right.
Unfortunately, there was a psychiatrist, very well respected global psychiatrist, who slept with this patient. She killed herself. This is pretty recent with that. But
what was the story around that?
I don't know. See, it's kind of heavy. But think about it. Like psychiatry, there's a lot of really amazing psychiatrists out there. Yeah. There's also a lot of psychiatrists that have failed out of other specialties in medical school. Anesthesia. If you fell out of anesthesia, if you go to medical school and you made it to your residency, more than likely you're never going to fail out. They will not. They will protect you. They will put you into a specialty that you can succeed in. So a lot of anesthesiologists that can't make it in anesthesia, they'll put them in a psychiatry residency and they'll make it there, So you're talking about people who maybe grew up, didn't have as much, many of the ladies wearing a shirt, different things like that.
Yeah.
So it can become a power play.
Interesting.
And then there are patients, right, clients, you say patients if it's in the hospital, you say clients if it's outside of. But there's people, and you get something called a savior complex. And the savior complex comes from either them or you. Either you think you're God because you're healing all these people, or they think you're God because you're an angel, because you saved their life. And you'll get that a lot from people. If you save their life, you get the savior complex. And there's healthy versus unhealthy.
So how do you put yourself in check with that? As a therapist.
Right. You have to be aware of it.
What becomes your reality? And
right.
You're saving people, you're helping people, the ego.
Right.
It's bigger.
Yeah, it does. It makes me more nervous, to a point, because there's a lot of people come in this space and they absolutely adore me. They think I have hung the moon. And I was like, listen, I have not. I have a lot of flaws. And once you see those flaws, you need to realize I'm still a person. Like, you're just seeing all my highlights right now. Sure. But there's a lot of negative things that go along with it.
Yeah.
And, one thing, because when people have had the savior complex with me, I'll hand them off to somebody else. And that's a beautiful thing with the way we do this is it's a team approach. right? So if I'm in the line and then they're becoming very attached to me, then I'll pull myself back. And I put in one of my other team players, with that. Now, other people would recognize that and stay in that. And that's from an ethical misalignment, that a lot of people have. But in the psychedelic space, ethics aren't being taught right now necessarily.
So that's a big challenge right now in the space specifically.
It is a big challenge, I mean, one of the ladies that's coming to be on the podcast, she has like one of my favorite topics ever that she spoke. I think it was at a Benzinga conference, but it was called, don't fuck your client. And she's not wrong, right? But there's been so much abuse in this space. Like it scares a lot of people away. Like, I don't want to go internationally. Like, what if something happens,
Ethically, it's totally fucked up. And
yes.
Where's the integrity in that?
Right.
It's interesting. It reminds me of, one of the rules with ayahuasca. I've done a lot of work with the One Heart organization. The rule is you can't have sex for 3 to 4 weeks after, and even before. You have your diet, and part of that is you're not having sex for, I think, up to 3 weeks to the retreat. So there's something
they're doing that on purpose.
Of course.
Yep.
Of course.
Yep.
I mean, you're vulnerable. You're completely vulnerable. You're not supposed to make any drastic decisions. They advise, especially if you're trying to work through trauma or, marriage, like don't make any drastic decisions. Sit with it. Let it work itself through.
Yep. No, I love that. And I think that needs to be, people need to be aware of that because they're not a lot of times. And there is a podcast called Cover Story. One of my friends, love her. She's like my biggest hero ever.
Yeah.
She's a forensic psychologist. She has like 25 capital murderers under her at any given time. And she's an international expert with sex trafficking. Like, yeah, I'm like, tell me a story.
Yeah.
She hates everybody in the world because she sees the worst of the worst of the worst, But she was like, all right, you're starting to do retreats. And she sent me the podcast Cover Story. She's like, I want you to listen to this. And I did.
Okay.
And basically, it was about a whole bunch of different retreats. And it was about people giving other people psychedelics. And then when they're in this vulnerable space, the leaders of the retreat would share their power and help heal the other people that were on the drugs to help restore their love. And I was like, no, that's rape.
That's rape.
Like you just drugged them and now you're sleeping with them, but they gave me their consent. You do not get people's consent when they're in a drug state of mind, Yeah. But it was interesting because these people were still rationalizing why it was okay.
But it goes back to your point of power, right? Suddenly, you've got someone that's leading a group and they've got full power. And I mean, I've heard numerous stories of rape or inappropriateness, and that's not okay.
No, it's not.
It's not okay.
Yeah, it's it's interesting. It's interesting because another podcast we're talking about greed and ego and spiritual narcissism. Now we're kind of talking about power, but it's one of those things I think too. It's like, what do you do with that power when you get it? Because right now, we're all trying to be leaders in the space. And there is going to come power with that because right now psychedelics in general is a powerless sector.
Yeah.
Right? And we're all coming into it. And it's like, how do we differentiate? How do we bring the right people in? How do we keep the right people in that we know won't abuse that power? If anything, they hold the power, they respect the power, but they protect it.
That's the big question. And how do you respect? And how do you protect it? How do you hold it sacred? And make sure, because it is such a gift, and it really is such an incredible. When the medicine works the way that it's supposed to work, I mean, it's transformative. But again, I mean, you have these people that a lot of it comes down to greed and ego and power. How do you protect it?
And I think, and maybe that's a differentiator, right? Power versus empower.
Yeah.
I always tell people, I'm like, you will feel empowered in yourself. You will feel aligned with who you are, and that's how psychedelics are intended to work. But there's a very big difference in feeling empowered with who you are versus having power as a person.
For sure.
And it's getting misinterpreted a little bit in the space. It's like Matthew Perry's piece, right? They should do a documentary on power, because that's all it was, power and greed. You know, he and I know I don't have it specifically, but maybe he had like 50 vials of ketamine, and it was like $55,000 or something like that. And ketamine costs about $30 a vial.
Of course, they were taking advantage of him.
They were destroying him.
Destroying him.
Like, in my personal opinion, and I would tell this to whomever, like, they should be charged for murder with that, because they took advantage of a person and then he died because of their inactions.
100%.
Yep. And it's not the drug by any means.
It's the dealer.
It was the dealer.
Right.
That's right. It's the power.
And meanwhile, the other, what do they call her? The ketamine queen.
Ketamine queen. I know. If anybody should be the ketamine queen, it should be me for good reasons.
Like, she's got this huge Instagram account, you know, flexing everywhere, and not even that smart. Not even that smart.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's crazy. It's sad.
It's sad.
Yeah, it's sad to see that this happens all the time. You know,
as anything. I mean, it's process. It's setting up guardrails, and you gotta go through. You know, you gotta go through the dirt to get to the end. Unfortunately.
Yeah, and then maybe that's what you do in the space, because I'm pretty good at writing policies, protocols, guidelines. But maybe you see situations like Matthew Perry's, and then you just start, maybe that's how you regulate the space to try to protect that from not happening to others. Because, you know, it wasn't just him. It's still not just him.
Yeah.
Like, if she's the ketamine queen, she wasn't the one, he wasn't her one client.
Right.
You know, and the physicians.
And I'm sure they get in that position. They're like, wow, they have a lot of money.
Yeah.
You know, it's going to make my book look impressive. I can talk about, oh, I got Matthew Perry as a client.
Yep.
And, you know, it's just a vicious cycle.
Yeah, it is. It's sad. And, you know, that's the piece, like, because we do home ketamine too, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, it's home ketamine, you know, that was the bad thing and whatever else. And no, not by any means. Walk
me through, what's the big difference between like home ketamine and, well, obviously I know what ketamine in a clinic is. What's
home
the big,
IV?
Yeah. Like how, if I was like, I want to do a home ketamine, what would that look like?
So home versus IV is, and everybody's a little bit different, right? With the home piece, there's not really too much standardization on it now. Fortunately, my science guys have all of our home ketamine data.
Yeah.
So we'll be able to publish those, and we'll start trying to see what the standardization looks like. But IV ketamine is absorbed 100%, right? So I look at IV ketamine as an intervention.
Mm-hmm.
I look at home ketamine as like a more management maybe kind of piece. So IV ketamine, 100%, 40-minute infusion. You're in the office. You go to a different level, right? To where you do have a lot of inwardness from, you know, processing and different things like that. But you do 6 treatments over 3 weeks. That's IV. You're in the office about an hour and a half each time. Home ketamine, we prescribe it to where they do it twice a week. So similar to the IV protocols. But the difference with home ketamine is it's absorbed anywhere from 20 to 45%.
Okay.
As compared to IV. So you are going to get a much higher dose of home ketamine than you would IV, but it's just because of the rate of absorptions differently.
Okay.
But it's not as intense when you're at home. So you take it, when you take it, it's more like a higher dose microdose.
I see. Okay.
So if you're microdose,
and what's the application? Is it like a pill? Is it?
Yeah, everybody's different, right?
Okay.
So us personally, we work with a pharmacy that actually puts it into a thick kind of solution.
Okay.
To where it's absorbed through the buccal route, so it kind of just absorbs in your mouth more so. Other people will do ODTs, so those are oral dissolving tablets.
Okay.
So you hold them in your mouth and they dissolve. You swallow some of it. Other people do troches. Those are kind of like little wax guys that you know, kind of like a Starburst.
Yeah.
Those will sit in your mouth. But you know, everybody's a little bit different. And then when you take it orally by mouth, it's going through something called your first pass metabolism, which is where your liver will take some of it too.
Got it.
When you're doing ketamine IV, it bypasses your liver.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful with it. You don't want to do it, you know, all the time home. It's just like every day, you know, you don't want to take 10 Benadryl every day. Eventually it's going to have negative side effects. But there are now, again, there's a lot of people who do take home ketamine every day, like to go to sleep at night.
Right.
Some companies will prescribe it to where people are taking it 2 to 3 times a day real small doses. And that's acting as like a benzodiazepine. I don't understand the science of that. I'm not seeing their, publications and such, but apparently it's helping, right? My biggest thing with ketamine, and nobody knows this yet specifically, is ketamine attacks your bladder over time. If you're abusing it, you have a higher chance of having bladder issues. So meaning that you've got your bladder, put your bladder and your brain in the same category.
Yep.
It has a layer around it. It's an endothelial lining around it. So it's like soft tissue around it. Ketamine can cross that little endothelial lining. A lot of medications can't.
Okay.
That's one reason why ketamine is so efficacious, because it can cross the blood-brain barrier and it goes directly where it needs to go in the brain to cause the effect. It also does that to the bladder. So when it crosses that blood liner to the bladder, IV-wise, you're getting extra fluid, it's going to push it out. If you're doing home ketamine normally, it's fine. It's not going to be that big of an approach. If you're taking, people who abuse ketamine, they're doing anywhere from 1,000 to 3,000 milligrams a day of ketamine. And that much ketamine is going to, the body can't process that much at one time, right? It goes through a life cycle, and there's all these life cycles that it has to keep going through in order to get out of your system. So it's usually 3 life cycles that helps one drug to get out of your system.
I'm assuming, do you build up a tolerance? Like you've got Matthew Perry who's doing 50 vials. Like, was it just not doing what it's supposed to, was ketamine just not?
He had 50 vials over like a 3 to 4 month period. When I figured out, I would have to see, because he had powder in his stomach too. Vials are powder. I mean, unless they were, and I've had some interesting, I worked in ICU for a long time. I used to love asking people about their drug use.
Yeah.
But the only thing I would think about is if they took the vials of the liquid, and then, because it's already pre-mixed, ketamine does not come in a powder. You do not add anything to it to make it liquid. So they could put it on a cookie sheet, put it in the oven, dry out the liquid, and then he could have consumed the powder.
So like street ketamine, they're just taking the liquid and they're making it into a powder.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's the only thing I would think. I mean, I'd have to hear his case more specifically, but he had powder in his system.
But that was, he was taking some serious doses. So he was taking some hero doses all day.
Yeah. And the thing about it, I don't know if you've ever been around somebody who's on ketamine, a lot of ketamine. Yeah. When they're on a lot of ketamine, they can sit and stare at you for like 48 hours, like literally. Like, and this is probably, it would be if I took 3,000 milligrams at one time, which would be 6 vials, right? Yeah. Which would be basically 6 general anesthetics for me. But, I would take it and then I would just sit there and stare at you like a zombie, drooling. Like, that's how you always know it's ketamine specifically. Yeah. When you take ketamine at high doses, you drool. If you take it at normal doses, your mouth gets dry. So if you're sitting there drooling on yourself and your heart rate's about 210,
you're in it.
They're on ketamine. Yeah. It's weird.
So how long do you think it was if he's taking that much of a dose, is it like 10, 15 minutes he's in that zone, or he's zoned out all day?
I don't know. Ketamine
he's in the K-hole.
It peaks in 40 minutes, right? So the half-life of ketamine is it's like 40 minutes. And it has to go through 3 life cycles. So ketamine, meaning that it has to go 40 minutes times 3, basically. Okay. So in about 3 hours, it will be out of your system. Okay. What happens with the bladder is ketamine gets into your ureters and it sits there for 11 days. So that's one dose. Sits there for 11 days. You usually pee it all out. It's fine. If you're stacking all these drugs on top of each other and they're just sitting there and nobody's getting processed out, ketamine will sit there and make holes in your bladder. It makes your bladder porous. So people who have abused ketamine, they get significant bladder cramps, bladder pain. In the UK, they're doing bladder transplants or urostomies. They're taking people's bladders out and putting a hole kind of in their bladder, where their bladder was. People aren't, they're like, ketamine's safe. It is safe. You're right. It is completely safe. I will tell you that all day long. Yeah. You can't take enough ketamine to treat an elephant and expect you're not going to have side effects.
Of course.
And that's what happened with Matthew Perry's case, right? But unfortunately, probably what happened, right? He did a big dose, and who knows? He did a big dose. When you do a really big dose, it can make your throat feel kind of numb in the back. Yep. So if he's sitting there, kind of zoning out, throat feels numb, he goes under. He's not feeling any type of water or anything like that. Like his swallowing reflex is gone, and That's the definition of a general anesthetic, is you don't have a swallowing reflex.
Okay.
So something happened. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall, and I could tell you all that happened, but yeah, it's unfortunate. It's the drug, right? It's the same way with social media. Yeah. Social media gets accused of being bad. And it's not that social media is bad. It's that we've not taught ourselves how to regulate anything. The Salience Network, like kids are like, I can't turn my brain off. Parents, I can't turn my brain off. I can't sleep because I'm just thinking about things all the time. And I always ask people about sleep. And actually, sleep is one of my questions on my scale. So I'll tell you the name of my scale.
Okay.
The public knows my scale is the Federal Unit Scale.
Mm-hmm.
I named it the Federal Unit Conservative Kinesiologic Investigational Task Force Scale.
It's easy to remember.
Fuck it.
Yeah.
That's the acronym.
Fuck it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's amazing.
So they actually put that in the paper. I've got little tiny script saying as to why I said it. But I did it because, it's a period of command, right? Yeah. So it's like when you say, you know what? Like you come to me and be like, I'm so broken.
Yeah.
I don't know what's wrong with me.
Yeah.
And it's like, you feel weak.
Yeah.
You feel insecure. You feel all these things versus you're like, fuck it. I guess it's normal. I'm just having a bad day. It's like you're controlling your narrative. And there's actually a lot of data behind that for people who have surgery. If you come in, say I'm having a knee surgery, I'm like, oh gosh, this is never going to heal. I don't know how I'm going to get through this. And you come in and you're just Debbie Downer, you actually will have more negative outcomes.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Versus if you come in and say, all right, let's go. Let's get this done. I got things to do. And it's the power of the mind, right? So anyway, with the scale, one of the questions is, how would you rank your quality of sleep? 0 bad, 10 great. And with sleep specifically, I don't think people understand the importance of sleep, because that's where your mind, right, processes the whole day behind you. And if you're not processing, if you're sleeping 2 hours. So I'll ask people a lot of times, can you not go to sleep, or do you sleep 2 hours? And it's usually one or the other. So usually they have a fear of going to sleep because of nightmares, night terrors. There's just like this undeniable, they're scared to go to sleep, but they're exhausted. So that's one piece. The other piece is I fall asleep and then in 2 hours, I'm wide awake. So it's actually both trauma responses. The first one is when I can't go to sleep because I can't turn my mind off because I'm afraid about going to sleep. That's because when they go to sleep, their brain takes them to places that they don't want to go, and they don't know how to control those because nobody's taught them that you can actually work with your brain. So that's one piece. The other piece is with trauma, people will sleep for about 2 hours, and that's when they're kind of like in light REMs. And then they start converting into like deep REM. And if they start converting into deep REM, the brain feels like it's too vulnerable in that mindset, and it will actually, the sympathetic nervous system kicks in, and the people will literally wake up wide awake. But they're exhausted, but they're ready to go. Yeah. And it's like the brain, it felt a trigger.
How do kids play a role in this?
Kids?
How do kids, like babies, play a role in this? Like, let's say you have good sleep, and then suddenly, talking about parenting, you don't have good sleep.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think that's a protective thing, right? Like used to, I could sleep through bombs.
Yeah.
Now, right, it could be like a fan turns off.
And you're up, ready to like
you're up.
Fight.
Yes. But yeah, you're right. I don't know. I think that's another learned technique strategy, I think, with kids.
How do you sleep? With everything that you have going on, do you sleep pretty well?
Usually.
How many hours do you get?
I usually will get like at least like 8 hours. Oh yeah.
Impressive. Do you have a routine? Like, are you out by like 9 p.m.?
Yes.
Like you try to get.
Yes.
So you're done.
When I'm done, I hit a wall. Unfortunately, in the daytime, I know this isn't healthy, but one day I'll get to the healthier part. I'll get up in the morning, say 6:30, which is actually late. Used to, when I worked in the hospital, I'd wake up about 4:45. Mm-hmm. So I'll get up about 6:30, and literally I will go until 9 p.m. that night. Mm. I don't take breaks right now. I don't go to the gym. I don't do any of that stuff. I start at that time, and then I pick up my daughter from school. I feed my child. Like, it's all about, and I just keep going to get all these tasks done. And then I can tell when it's time. And that's the one grace that I do have.
So you just feel your body,
Oh, my brain stops functioning. Like, it's like, here's a word and here's the other word. And there's a wall in between. Yeah. And I'm just like, I'm frozen.
What do you do to de-stress? Or do you not look at it as stress? maybe it's the language around stress. Like if you're working on 20 different projects, let's say you're dealing with 7 different fires. Like, do you ever just say, I'm done and I need to go just take a walk or take a break or meditate? Like, do you have any discipline around that?
No, I don't. I mean, I do when I recognize it, because I know if I keep going down that stressful pathway, I will break.
Yeah.
If I start feeling the stress of that, I usually will just switch to a different topic. One that's either, because there's so many different topics that I'm working on at one time. So it's like if I'm doing a PowerPoint presentation, then I just need to find photos. Like I gauge that based on my stress levels. So like the audit, like I've been working on this stupid audit for like 16 months and 2 audits. But if I don't feel like doing the audit, then I'll go do something fun. It's still a task, but it's a different task, right? Yeah. So I do that. My dogs, my dogs are a huge stress reliever for me. Right. And
you go for a walk, like do you get outside?
I'll go to the dog park. Okay. Yeah, usually I go to the dog park with my dogs, and I've got them all trained because I've got 3 Great Danes and a hound dog. And I'll take them, and they're all trained to get out of the car and walk to the dog park because I can't put them all on leashes. It's like a sled. Amazing. But I'll do that. Or my daughter, like she likes to watch certain TV shows. Like I'll sit with her and watch TV. That helps me to de-stress some there too. Other times, I'll get to the point, like, and a lot of people are like, oh, you always answer your phone or you always answer your texts. When I'm done, it's going to take a lot for me to answer stuff.
So you're disciplined to just shutting it out.
Yep.
And the restart.
That's one thing I've noticed. I am extremely disciplined.
Have you always been like this, or? It's
probably playing sports throughout. Yeah. Because I played college sports too. And when we were in college, like I was disciplined enough to like drink 12 beers, 4 to 5 nights a week, smoke a pack of cigarettes, and then get up at 6 a.m. to go for a 5-mile run.
I get that.
I was consistent with that.
Yeah. Right. And when you're that age, you're like, you don't think about it. You're like, just got to sweat it out. Oh, yeah. Good.
Yeah. I'm fine. But it is discipline, and it is getting up, and it's having the ability to get up. And that's a big piece of mine, talking about veterans or thinking about veterans. And maybe we can talk about this, with some of the veterans on the podcast, but when they say, well, they're depressed, they can't get out of bed. And I'm like, depression also exists in the military, and they do get out of bed. So don't group those 2 things together.
Right.
Because one's depression and one's discipline. And either way, you're trying to say that just because they can't get out of bed, they're actually worse off than a veteran who is getting out of bed because they're disciplined. So, there's so much here, right? Like, we don't know how to live life. I think that's a big piece of it. Maybe that's what psychedelics are allowing us to do, is to learn how to live life the way it's intended to.
Or do you think we're just forgetting how to live life?
No.
We're just so distracted.
I don't think anybody ever taught us how to live life.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like what we do, right, in life as we evolve. Like nobody teaches us how to be a good parent. Oh, it'll just come naturally.
Right.
Like how to choose the right partner, how to calm your mind. What's your bedtime routine before you go to sleep? Nobody teaches us those things. We just think that they come normally. And then when we start misaligning or making the wrong decisions, instead of telling us and teaching us what the right decision may be, we're, instead thrown in jail, have mental illness issues, them getting medicated. Yeah. And it's like, stop medicating them and try to see if you can at least first teach them a strategy that they can start implementing in their life, which is an effective coping mechanism to where they can learn how to walk with themselves.
Yeah.
It's a big piece.
Yeah. My son.
Yeah.
Doing the best that you can raising your kid. And, there's that fine line of like, teaching him right from wrong, being disciplined, and it's hard.
It's so hard.
It's so hard, but I think it's also just spending the time. Yep. And I'm super grateful and blessed. We've done he's only 3.5 so far. We've done a pretty good job, and he's a good kid. And I gauge it just by seeing him out in the world. Like, he's compassionate, he cares. He asks good questions. He's not afraid. He doesn't have fear. And, like you're saying, you just do your best, and that's a good indicator, all right, he's good. He's good so far.
Yeah. Well, and I think I tell this to my daughter all the time. I'm like, notice the mistakes I make in life so you don't make them.
Yeah.
Right. And think about like the elders. Think about in other cultures how elders are so respected.
Yeah.
Right. And psychedelics are actually helping to bring that respect back of the elders. Right. Think about in our group or whatever you want to say. We don't look at our older people in our life as anything close to elders.
Yeah.
We look at them as a burden. A lot of times it's like, oh, they're older. Now I got to take care of them. We're not looking for their wisdom at all. And it's like, when did that change?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, and I mean, I guess because when we became all knowing,
I was gonna say, like,
all knowing,
do you think it's because we live in such a society of we're all self-absorbed? Not we all, but we live in this culture of self-absorption.
Yeah. Not only do I think it's that, maybe it was when technology came to play.
Yeah.
Because I did have a nurse a long time ago. I think this is when I was doing anesthesia, who came up to me and she said, like, there's the older population that don't know technology, but they have all these skills. There's the younger population that have no skills, but they know all technology. And then there's the people in the middle. And she was one of the ones in the middle, and she was trying to get the younger ones to hear and respect the older ones, but they thought they were idiots, the older ones, because they didn't understand the technology piece. So maybe it's technology that's changed it all to where, it's like, oh, let me Google that. Oh, let me do this. And it's like, now we're seeing like, okay, did you fact check anything? Like, is this actually peer reviewed data or is it just what somebody said?
How do you think we are losing touch of human connection?
100% I do. Absolutely.
I mean, what is it going to look like in 20, 30, 50 years?
I think we've got to be aware of it, right? And implement what we want to implement, because this last weekend, right, I went to the Psychedelic Summit on Necker, right?
Yeah, super cool.
Everybody should be jealous of.
Jealous.
But sitting in that room, right, with all these awesome, amazing, humble people that are just really like world leaders, you felt that energy, you felt the empathy, you felt the connection. Yeah. And you felt the importance of, right? So there was that I just went to. And then about a month ago, I went to my national conference for anesthesia out in San Diego. And they were actually voting on, do we want to put the meetings online 100%? Or do we want to have them in person? And fortunately, they voted it down and said, no, in person, you have to have that for that connection. I think with society, we need to be aware of that. Like, we need those connections. We need people like us. Now, with AI and internet and all those things, as they come around, can we use those to help? Yes.
Right.
But do those need to be the primary? No. Right. So the AI bot that I have with Pharma Therapeutics, which is the research and division, right? They've made her to where she speaks 100 languages. So the neat thing with that, right, is you log into the platform. It's me talking to you. My accent's way better though.
Yeah.
But I'm talking to you and I'm asking you all these questions. They're the federal unit scale, and it's a risk mitigation, right? So it's risk. I'm looking for risk. I don't care. I do care if you have a gun sitting in your lap, but if you have a gun sitting in your lap, I'm too late. I want to be like, okay, when were you in the green zone, and when did you first get in the yellow zone? Let's try to get you back in the green zone instead of like black and red zone, which is what we're doing right now in mental health. But, but with the bot, if we can push her out, if we have access to people, if they have Wi-Fi, if they get access to a phone or something, right? And if this bot can assess them like once a month, do a risk scale, and can show them like, you're doing better, you're doing worse. It's almost like, the R rings, right? It's giving you some type of self-reflection on, okay, wait a minute, what did I do last month as to why I was doing better versus what did I do this month as to why I'm doing worse, right? So it's giving them some type of self-reflection, and we're not having to hire a therapist or a psychiatrist or worry about the psychiatrist sleeping with everyone or the therapist sleeping with everyone, because the bot is bot. Like, she is here and that's it. Yeah. Yeah. But it's like, if we can get her across 100 languages across the world, is that a way that we solve the issue of giving people access to care?
That's wild.
Yeah. And that's what we're working on.
It's a pretty big initiative.
It is. Yeah.
And how's the tech going so far?
Oh, these tech guys, I mean, I think they...
this is NASA? It's your NASA crew?
Yeah, these are my NASA Tesla boys. But oh yeah, they're amazing. Like I just get on there and you know, they think I'm really smart, I guess, because I made 5 questions that connect 5 different diagnoses. And but yeah, I'm not. I'm really good with assessments. But when I'm sitting there with them, they start talking. Like it's just like I don't know. I'm just so impressed. I know I'm surrounded by amazing people.
Elevates you,
Yeah, they're my Clydesdales. That's what I tell them all the time. I'm sure they appreciate that. But yeah, it was like at the this last weekend, a guy who I adored him initially, but then I meet him in person and he is amazing. His wife is amazing too.
Yeah.
But Tom and Jen Satterley, they actually run an All Secure Foundation. But Tom was in Delta, he was a very high ranking Delta officer, maybe one of the highest ranking Delta officers for about 20 plus years. Wow. Like Black Hawk Down, the movie was made after him. So he's amazing, right?
Yeah.
But just the coolest guy ever. Like, what was it? These were long days. Like our day started at like 5 a.m. and went to like 3 a.m. every day.
How many people were there?
About 60.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And, but we were sitting on a boat, going over to another island. And Tom said, this is the longest sustained environment I've been in since Somalia.
Just drop that. Yeah.
It's just comments that, So you're sitting in awe of all these amazing people from all these different aspects of life coming together. And I think that's the coolest thing I like about, this world is like, you see people, it's like maybe the people that are playing the power card, they're actually the weakest ones.
Right.
Versus the people that are in the fire. They're like being the true leaders, trying to bring everybody together
for the right reasons.
Yeah. And and I was actually mentioning earlier, it's like, I know a lot of people get disheartened and it's just like the world's bad. There's so much evil and blah, blah, blah. And I see these awesome people come into play and I'm like, no, we're going to win.
And that's human connection.
Yeah.
To your point. Like you had that experience surrounded by super interesting people. And you left just so elevated and inspired and empowered.
Yep.
And
you can't get that from a computer meeting.
Can you get that from AI? Can you get that from computer meeting?
Yep.
I mean, I did a podcast. It was yesterday. On a computer. It was like it's just not the same.
Right.
You just can't pick up that energy.
Yep.
And you can't code that energy. At least not right now.
Right.
Right now.
Eventually, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I believe in the power of AI. But I believe that it has to be, because I had a lot of guys, they were like, I can make you into a bot. And I was like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
The guys that made me into a bot are MDs, PhDs that are ethically aligned, right?
Right.
And they know ethics.
Sure.
Other people making bots in mental health, it's like, no. You can't be a tech person because you really need to understand the vulnerable product that you're dealing with, and that's a person's life, so you have to, it's something to, be very well aware of with all those pieces. But I do think with AI, as long as there's a standard, right? And if we're able to measure that standard and then to auto-correct that standard again, I think that's what a lot of people are afraid of is like, AI is going to come and take over everything. Well, can it? Maybe. I don't know. But, it's the same way as if I drew your blood and it's like, I'm going to put your blood through a machine so I can count all your red blood cells. And you're like, Nope, I don't trust the machine. Katie, I want you to count each one.
Yeah.
And it's like, if we can do AI that way, right? There's a standard of therapy. There's a standard of consultations. There's a standard. Then I don't have to worry about your history. I don't have to worry about if you're going to sleep with somebody. I don't have to worry about if you've abused people in the past or if you're going to say something verbally. Like, therapists sometimes say things to people. It's like, why did you think that was okay?
Right.
And they feel entitled to say that. And I'm just like, no, that's not okay.
Yeah.
And then I had a therapist one time tell me I was transactional. And I was like, oh my God, here it comes. But she was like, oh yeah. She's like, nurses are transactional. And I was like, nurses are like we're voted like the kindest, compassionate profession in the world for like 50 years in a row.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, you all are transactional. And I'm just like, it's just weird, right? It's people still trying to silo everything, saying, I'm the best. It's like, why can't we all get on the same team and say, we are all the best? And it's like, who do you need? What do you need? How can we help?
Agreed. I always felt, always is a strong word, but the therapists that I've worked with in the past, now that I think about it, just circling back to this conversation, there is a bit of that power shift that they have, and the information that they're trying to extract from you. And then I've left a lot of sessions feeling completely unresolved.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm like, I feel like I listened to their story more than my story, and there's no resolution.
You're not wrong. And, and here's the thing too, right? Because I've had to learn all this stuff, and I was like, why is this so hard? And it's so hard because nobody's done it yet.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I'm learning is, so in the medical field, we have to do peer reviewed, right? So we don't look at anything unless it's peer reviewed, meaning if I write a paper, I can't write a paper and be like, oh, I'm going to publish this. Like, it doesn't work that way. Like,
Right.
You have to have your peers go in, criticize it,
Break it down.
break all of it down.
Yeah.
Is this legitimate? What are your resources? All this stuff, right? And that's what happens in the medical field is we eat each other first before we see which one survives.
Yep.
In the therapy world, therapists can actually have their own unilateral opinion of something, and it's okay.
Interesting.
Because it's their own self-opinion, and they believe in having self-opinions of things.
Right.
That does nothing for standardization of a field.
So everyone's an expert.
That's right. They're all experts. And they all, so they teach you, like when I did my therapy pieces in psychiatry, we did some in psychiatry, not much, but they teach you like different people's gross structures of what you should think about. But then you need to just create your own, right? So it's like, well, I created my own therapy based upon Erickson's and Freud and, internal family systems. Like, so they have these like gross structure outlines, but then they create their own style.
Right.
And I hear that. But if you are not in the space for the right reason and you're creating your own style of that,
Yeah.
you can create a lot of damage to people because you're trying to imply what they need based on what you think they need, not giving them the ability for that.
Right.
And that's probably what you're talking about.
Yeah.
If you walked out and you heard their stories, they're trying to connect to you. They didn't connect with you.
Right.
And then when you walked out, you're just like, what was that?
Right. What was that? And me being me, I go back. You go back for another punch in the face. I feel worse.
I like it. I like when therapists tell me, gosh, people probably hate me. But I like it when therapists say like, oh yeah, they're a great client. Like we've made a lot of progress. I've been seeing them once a week for the last 33 years.
Right.
And immediately in my mind, you're ineffective.
Yeah. Right.
Why would you ever see somebody once a week for 33 years and actually talk about it like it's success?
Right. And how's this?
No, like that's codependency. Like that should stop, Yeah. And gosh, there's so much that's accepted in the therapy world that shouldn't be,
I don't know why I'm seeing this like robot, this like therapist robot. It's just like sitting there.
Yeah.
And they're really good.
Yeah. There's actually data that came out. There's data that came out that said people trust AI more than they trust the person.
Yeah.
You know why, right? Because you tell me something, I'm not going to be like, ooh, or pause.
Right.
Like,
well, you're going to feel more comfortable to kind of drop your ego and just,
here it is.
here's the kitchen sink.
There's no judgment.
There's no judgment.
Right. That's absolutely right. So we're working on those different types of strategies as well. That's right. And then two, like I said, the bot can't sleep with anybody yet.
Yet.
We'll make her look like Barbie.
Come on, VR came. That whole world of VR came pretty quick.
You're right. No physical. You're right.
Yeah. Just a block, round hole, block,
it's
two
Barbie.
legs.
You remember in the Barbie movie?
Yeah.
Like she was trying to describe their parts. She's like, neither of us have anything.
Right. What are those? What are those vacuums that?
Roombas.
Yeah, it's just a therapy Roomba. But you probably want to be careful. I just went somewhere really inappropriate. But yeah.
I think one big piece that we were talking about it is like parenting. So putting all this garbage that we've just talked about into something
parenting or
succinct.
being parented. I'm going through a bit of like, you know, my parents are older, and the last few years have just been an absolute shit show. We're talking about like, I don't know why my dad's like, I'm talking about ketamine and psychedelics.
Right.
They fell into the system really hard, pretty much their whole life, because that's what they know. Trust the doctor. Doctor writes a script. I have this problem, this ailment. You know, starts in pain, then it goes. It's your atypical, traditional, sad story on big pharma and how bad it fucks you up. And unfortunately, they got into that system. And now that they're older, you know, there's no resolution.
Right.
To my mother, because this is after a while, like, you know, if you know, you Baker Act someone and they have mental health issues, they have physical pain, they can't get into certain, you know, not homes, what do you call it, like rehabilitation centers because she has this element, or it's just a mess. It's a mess. So yeah, that's where my head's been. So yeah, my dad just, because I'm like, Dad, why don't we look at, I've been saying this for years, why don't we look at alternative treatments? And suddenly, you know, oh, have you heard of ketamine? You know, and somehow he got his psychiatrist to just, meanwhile, she's got all these other pills that she's, you know, been prescribed, and, you know, went at home ketamine treatment, zero effect, which my mind's blown. So I don't know.
But it could be, dosing wise, especially if she's on. You got to look at what everybody else is on too, and measure that accordingly, which a lot of times they don't.
Of course.
They'll just say, this is what the data says. Here's the dose. It's like, no, you titrate to effect because everybody's different.
Right.
But you know, I was talking about this a few years ago, actually, at a conference. You've got people coming into the psychedelic space and they're like, this is what we need to do, right? And they're not wrong. This is what we need to do.
Right.
But they're looking at it from their present day to day with the future, right? So you got that psychedelic crew. You've got the present day psychedelic crew, which is kind of like me, Charles, Patty, all of them, right? Yeah. We're in the ketamine space. We see the good, right, with psychedelics. We're helping people to move forward. We're also taking care of people that are open-minded enough to look at ketamine or psychedelics. And then you have people that are in the present past, that are stuck in the old traditional psychedelic ways, which is probably honestly 95% of the population, right? Yep. And these people, what people don't see is, yes, we may have the answer with psychedelics up here, but do not forget about the people that are back here. Yeah. Because we've got to bring them with us. Right. And you've got to understand your side, the ketamine and psychedelic side, and the traditional psychiatry side, because each of those needs to be individually respected. Sure. And if you don't do that, you're going to have people die that feel lost. Yeah. And that's, you look at your parents. Like my mom, passed away a couple of years ago at 70, right? Mom was young. And she was complete. Yeah. She retired like 2 years prior, right? She's a very high executive. Yeah. Honestly, she just gave up on life. We talked about it. She's like, I'm done. Yeah. And
was she sick or?
She had Parkinsonian symptoms. Like, they treated her for Parkinson's. So she got into the whole traditional thing of here's all the meds, here's all the drugs. Yep. And she would stop taking it and her symptoms would not change. Right? Because I'm like, okay, wait a minute. Like, so now I'm seeing a lot of weird Parkinson's and ALS diagnoses across the board. Teenagers are getting diagnosed with this crap. And it's like, what is this? Like, and is it trauma? Maybe. I mean, I lost a brother when I was 14. He was 17. It was my mom's only son. Mm. And, was it complex trauma that caused her shaking and things like that? I don't know. Right. But I just know, and, we had that talk, and I'm pretty direct with talks, but, I asked her, I said, are you tired? She said, yes, I'm done. Yeah. She couldn't eat anymore. She was so sick all the time on the medications. Her family was like, let's get her a feeding tube. And my mom was so strong, right? Meaning that my mom was 5'2". She worked at a company called Eastman. She was one of the highest level female executives at Eastman, worked from the ground up, right? I was at a club when I was in college. And there was this guy who was a bouncer. And we were talking. And I said, what else do you do? Because you seem pretty smart to be a bouncer. And he's like, oh, I have my master's from MIT in computer science. And he's like, I just do this on the side just for fun. I was like, and I said, oh, cool. Where do you work? He said, Eastman. And I was like, oh, yeah, my mom works there. And he's like, who's your mom? I was like, Barbara Lewis. And he said, she's your mother? And I was like, why? And he's like, you don't look her in the face. He's like, I was on the elevator with her the other day and I had my head down.
Wow.
He's like, unless you have your shit in line, you do not talk to her.
Wow.
And I was like, are you serious? No way. And it was so funny, right? Like seeing my mom and knowing she had, that, but
that's tough on the other end, right? Like you see your mom there and suddenly they're here.
That's right. Yep. And she was still as stoic as could be, but when I asked her, I said, Mom, are you tired? And she said, yeah. And that's when I got hospice involved, And I said, all right, let's just, let's be comfortable. Stay at your house.
So it was quick.
Yep. And my dad, I mean, she was so like, it was like, what is it? Like the Hunger Games.
Yeah.
I said, some days it'd be so sad. The next day, it's like the leader of the Hunger Games. I'll be like, back off,
Yeah.
But my dad one time talking about parent stuff, he was like wanting to get her into an assisted living at the end.
Yeah.
I said, there's no way. Like she would never lower herself down enough to show any weakness to anyone else.
Yeah.
And he was like, he gets me on the phone with this guy. He's like, all right, you're going to get on the phone with this guy that's going to help get her admitted into this assisted living.
Yeah.
He said, I need you to lie so we can get her in. I was like, no, because he was like, just talk about how she's kind. She's going to be appropriate.
Right.
I was like, but she's
but that's what they start doing because they have to lie and rig the system so they can
get them in,
squeeze them into.
Yeah. I was like, she won't come out. She would lock me out of her own bedroom at her own house. I'm like, Mom, this is ridiculous. Get up and unlock your door.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it is hard.
It's hard.
It's so
really
hard because we see the transition.
Right.
And, my mom actually did towards the end of her life. She did do ketamine. Amazing. She did amazing with it. They didn't tell me specifically, all
was
the
it
details.
For like the depression of the
Parkinson's
journey? Oh.
No, yeah, my mom would not go in for any type of mental health. She never went to therapy after my brother died. Nothing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mental health is
no
weakness.
Right, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Then we're cut from the
right.
same.
So she's like, I will go do ketamine for my Parkinson's. I'm like, okay. And they didn't tell me what happened, but they said like it was all about my brother. Like it was, and it was as soon as she got anything, they said it was one of the worst, cases that they'd heard. So she did like 3 or 4 treatments, and then she's like, okay, I'm healed. I'm great. And she did. She looked great. And she never went back and just, wouldn't go back.
That's what's fascinating. That one traumatic experience
can destroy
blossoms like that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah.
And it sounds like she just didn't packed it up, put it in a compartment, and then forgot about it.
Yep. And that's a piece of it,
and how it just...
And then it's just sitting there, right? It's just sitting there the whole time.
Yeah, those things don't go away.
No, they don't.
And it's that generation. Like that's just what they know.
Yep.
Yep.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Sight, out of mind.
And it's
Is that how your parents taught you? Like, don't talk about.
I was told my whole life I was too sensitive.
Yeah.
And now that I've grown up, I'm like, I'm kind of a dick sometimes. Like I'm not too sensitive by any means, but do I have emotions? Yes. Right. Can I see other people's emotions? Yes. Yeah. Am I kind and caring? Yes. But my sensitivity piece was, probably when I asked too many questions. Mm-hmm. Like you're too sensitive, or who knows. But no, you didn't talk about any of those things.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do all the time to my daughter now, right? I think we probably talked about it before. It's like whenever I make a decision with her, if I say yes or no, I will say, do you know why I said yes? Do you know why I said no? Because I'm teaching her critical thinking skills.
Of course.
Yeah. And that's, it's a huge thing. Like when I was little, when they said yes or no, you knew. You did not ask a question.
Right.
And my gosh, I've been pushed against the specter like that. I've been pushed against life ever since I was born.
Big time.
But yeah, I was pretty clever when I was in kindergarten. I got in trouble for something.
Did you go in the corner and they put the hat on you?
No, I was standing outside to be paddled.
Actually, you went to the hallway. You went to the tough school.
I went to the tough school. I was in the hallway, and I was with the principal make rounds like once every few hours, right? And so I'm sitting there, and I was like, my whole life, right? I've been an excellent student. Like I always had top GPAs, played all the sports, student council presidents, class presidents, all those things, right? Yeah. As I'm also like, hey, Katie, the cops are here to talk to you. I'm like, good God, come on, you know? Yeah. So, the principal came around. He's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" I was like, "Oh, I'm in kindergarten." I was like, I'm out, get ready to get a drink of water." He's like, "Okay, hope you have a good day." I was like, "Okay, thanks." So like I go over and I'm just really thirsty, drinking all my water until he leaves the hallway.
Right.
And I go stand back again at the door. She's like, "Well, I guess he didn't come." I was like, "Yes, not.
Guess not.
Go back in." So yeah,
Funny.
I probably led to my mom's trauma, probably significant a bit.
Yeah, isn't it amazing how our parents just fuck us up, and we're just like obsessed of like how do I just do this different with our kids? But I've been taking the approach of like not the victim, but like it's a gift. It's like, all right, I can do this better, and it's easier.
Yeah, and it's hearing that too, right?
Yeah.
It's even though it was common and normal to us, like with my daughter, it was a big thing that she wanted me to take her to school and to pick her up. I never had that.
Right.
It didn't even cross my mind that would have any importance.
Walk to school. Take a bus.
Yeah.
Take a bus, walk to school.
Like I got dropped off at friends' houses at like 5:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
Like their friends' parents would take me to school.
Yeah.
You know, and it's what you did. But like now, like
you were getting to the bus stop no matter what. And if you didn't, you were walking to school.
Right.
And school wasn't around the corner.
You made it happen.
You made it happen.
Uphill, both ways, in the snow, down in
cars, snow,
horses,
rain.
Yeah.
And if you had your kids do that now, that's abuse.
Right. You're not wrong.
Right.
But but maybe that's the pillar. Maybe the parents are the pillars now.
They are.
Because, there's technology, all these things around that are constantly changing. So maybe kids need parents as that.
And you can't be soft. I think that's a big thing on your kids. You can't be soft on them. Well, you can do whatever you want. At least for me, when Max falls, for example, I always ask him if he's crying or if he's complaining. I said, "Max, are you hurt or are you scared?" That's what I always ask him. He stops. He thinks, "No, it was scared." I said, "Okay, you're right. Good. Get up. Go."
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with a little tough love.
I talking about that, my daughter could tell you more about this. I have a lot of rage. That's one of my go-tos. Most people would never see that.
Mm-hmm.
But one of my girlfriends who I grew up playing sports, so I was ejected out of like 13, 15 games just because.
What'd you play? What sport?
I played 5 in high school. So I did basketball, golf, cross country. Softball was my big sport, and I danced. But the reason I was ejected, and I had a therapist tell me the reason I was ejected from games was childhood trauma. And I was like, no. And it was, fortunately, I had a WNBA player on there, and she's like, "No, I was ejected a lot too. It's not from childhood trauma, you were ejected." And I personally believe the reason I was ejected from games is because when I had a goal in mind, nothing was going to get in front of my goal. It's kind of like with this company, with this mission that I have.
Sure.
Here's my goal here, and it doesn't matter what you throw at me. I'm going to keep moving on. And that was, I think why I got ejected a lot is because I didn't know either when to shut my mouth or to stop. Like, don't punch the player, like you can't do that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. What were we talking about before that, before I got ejected out of games?
I don't know. We've been all over the place. The kids and the
tough love. I know. Tough love. That's it. So anyway, looking at my personality and talking to the girlfriend that I went to school with, I told her, I was like, "Kim, I am so patient now." And she's like, "No way." Like there's no way. Like I was known to be extremely aggressive.
Yeah.
And I was like, "No, really, like I am very patient. I'm kind, all these different things." And my daughter, when she was little, when she would mess up, I would react verbally, like, no, like yelling at a dog, just no real fast and loud. And it would scare her so much. She told me, like, now she's like, "I felt like you were going to kill me every time you would say no in that manner."
Yeah.
So, and I could see it in her little eyes when she was little. I could see the fear that I instilled in her when I would just say no very quickly.
Right.
So I told her, this was when she was 4. I'm going to start counting to 3. I will not tell you no in my voice unless you make me get to 3.
Right.
To this day, she never has.
Brilliant.
Like, so
it's the count.
It was the
count. It's
count.
the count. You still do the count?
But I gave her, well, I don't now.
1,
She's great. Right.
2.
Now I just go gab. and
Yeah.
she sees it, but she knows, right? So there's a communication style, that where poor kid, like she's got me as her mom, and then her dad's a mercenary who used to work with Blackwater. So
Yeah.
she works with, and then her stepdad, is a heart surgeon, right?
Yeah.
So she's got pretty good, strong personalities
Yeah.
around her, but she handles us all. She controls all of us,
Yeah.
very well.
Of course they do. Oh, they figured it out. Max runs the show.
Yep.
So being an athlete, you developed this. I mean, have you had this competitive drive your whole life, do you think? And where did that stem from?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I started when I was 9. Well, I started dancing when I was 5, and I started when I was 9. Maybe having an older brother. That probably drove a little.
What was the age difference?
Like 3.5 years.
Okay.
Yeah. He always did dirt bikes. That's actually why he died. It was a dirt bike accident. But, it was always, he would always have like 20 people in our driveway, and they would be on motorcycles and 4-wheelers and 3-wheelers. And we had trails behind our house. And I always I'd be in my go-kart. And they'd be like, out.
See, this sounds like the best childhood.
Oh, we had a blast. Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
We had a blast.
We used to do this shit every,
Yep.
come home from school, get in a little bit of trouble, or you're playing sports, or you're in the back biking, dirt biking. Like, does that happen anymore? Like, I'm curious.
No, because now we'll call people on like violent or the loudness ordinances, right?
And it's sad because my childhood was great. I mean, there was definitely dysfunction there, but like I didn't look at that as dysfunction. It was like I had an older brother, I had an older sister. Like we were busy doing things to not think about the nonsense.
Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah, I've never thought about my competitive nature until you just said that.
Yeah.
I have no idea why.
Yeah.
When my daughter's playing Roblox, I'm like, where's the next level?
Yeah.
She's like, there's no next level. I'm like, how do you play this game? I need another level. So maybe it's like maybe I feel like I need to prove myself.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the competitive nature. Is that, will I ever be able to prove myself? No, I don't think so. I don't think my brain knows how to measure that.
Yeah.
So yeah. And I do look at this company as a sport. The business, what I'm doing, entrepreneurship,
It's a whole sport.
Is a sport. It's my new game.
Yeah.
And then my brain can actually quantize that a lot better.
Yeah.
Pre-game,
You
post-game.
just want to win.
Preseason, postseason. Yep.
Yeah.
And you better not get hurt.
But it's great when you're actually doing something that's helping other people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're making change.
Making change.
It's rewarding.
And not only that, but it's like when you hit these different phases in life, like, when you're like feel broken or whatever else, when you hit these different phases in life, what we do, unfortunately, I think in society is when we feel this uneasiness, we actually go back.
Yep.
When life's intending us to go forward.
Yep.
And I think that's the beautiful thing about entrepreneurs is we have either the dumbness or the braveness to take a chance.
You just got to get over that hump sometimes.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, we all have insecurities.
Well, 100%.
Right?
Yeah.
We don't want to lose.
Yep.
And then there's the self-doubt sometimes. What am I doing?
Oh my gosh.
What am I doing
badly.
here?
Yes. Yeah. Am I an idiot? Like,
and that's real.
Yes.
It's a hard feeling sometimes.
It sucks. Yeah. And I think a lot of people have that self-doubt when they really go down a negative road of depression, anxiety, suicidality. I think they get a lot of that self-doubt, right? Because that's when they'll tell you like, no, like they'll be better off if I'm not here. Yeah. It's like, no, don't start that. Like that's your own personal opinion, but a kid needs their parent. And good, bad, or ugly, a kid needs their parent. Definitely. And, that's one of the things that child psychologists taught me is like, even if it's a negative situation, it allows that child to see a negative situation, but then they can also see a positive situation. So they have a comparable value as to choose what they want.
Right.
So even if people don't think they're the best, it's what you just said, right? With our parents, like I'm going to do it better than what I was doing previously. Right. And it's because we were able to see these comparables. And if we can't see a comparable, that's when we won't do well because we don't know anything else that exists. So what would you say, Ben? What would be your 2 biggest things that you would say as a parent to your kid self and then to your parenting self, parented self?
The 2 biggest things that I would say, got to think about this, is, I don't want to say, it sounds a bit cliche, is like, just show up with love. Just show up with love. And, love can come in all aspects, right? Like, it can be tough love. Shit happens, But as long as you're showing up with love, you can see it in your kid. And you can see how they turn out. And, be easy on yourself. Because it's really easy to look at, I don't want to say compare, but you're in this constant state of like, I want to be the best. Sometimes you have to kind of like business, right? Like I took the attitude years ago. I'm like, you know what? If I can get 75, 80% there, like I'm doing great. And I know I kind of take that approach for my parenting skills. I'm like, just 75, 80%, give yourself a little flexibility because, we don't have the answers. It's like business. You can have a business plan, but the likelihood of you hitting it is slim to none. Do the best that you can. If you can get 75 to 80%, you're doing a pretty good job.
I love that.
Yeah.
Room for empathy, room for grace.
Yeah.
And then, loving your kid and letting them know that they matter. And I think that's a big piece, like when we grew up from Latch and Key, right? Is they did love us. They were there to provide for us. But were we heard as a person, or were we just told what we needed to learn?
Yeah.
And I think now we're seeing, like, you've got to hear that kid as a person.
Yeah. And
if we can invest in that person, that's how they grow.
Totally.
Yeah.
One more.
I'm ready.
And have fun. Because it's fun.
Yeah.
Like we're in our heads all day, creating a million different things and developing this, and I got to do this and that. It's like when I go home, it's like I actually turn it off, and I'm like, all right, like this is my buddy. I just want to hang out, like have a good time with them.
Yeah.
Just have fun, because it is fun. I mean, there's time for discipline, but like, it's so beautiful to see the innocence and the curiosity.
Yeah.
Like, and they're having fun. So have fun with them.
I love that. Yeah, the have fun. I'll tell this one last thing. One of my board members who's newer, she's amazing.
Yeah.
And a few months ago, I was telling her, like, okay, here we are, right? I draw this whole big board of like this and this and this and this and this, and it's like so much stress for me every day.
Yeah.
And she's like, all right, this is going to be amazingly fun. And I was like, are you out of your mind?
Yeah.
Like, how is any of this fun? She's like, look what you've created.
Right.
She's like, this is amazing. Like, this is a fun adventure. And let's figure out how to get it done.
Yeah.
Right. And you're right. I think we need to not only look at that from a parenting standpoint, but look at it in life, look at it at our jobs. And if we're not having fun, if we can't be in the moment, then change it.
Of course.
And if you can't change it, if you don't know how to change it, then you can give us all a call and we can talk about ketamine and psychedelics. And we can use those catalysts as to how to change it, but change is the only constant that we have.
Yeah.
And we've got to learn how to rely on that.
Yeah, and we all have it in ourselves. You can change. You can change the moment like that. Like, I kind of look at it like this: like, it's two rabbit holes. You can be the victim, or you can be the other side of it. Right? It's all kind of how you look at it.
Yep.
And it's the blessing. You can always find a blessing in something. For the most part.
Gratitude is the attitude.
Gratitude is the attitude. Thank you. Thank you.
No, I agree. And optimism. And you know what? It's a lot harder sometimes to be optimistic than it is to be pessimistic.
Of course.
But it makes you live life so much better.
It's easy. It makes life easier.
So much easier.
Yeah.
Yeah. Stop looking for the bad in others. They'll show you. You get plenty of chances to look for the bad.
That's right.
Try to find the good.
Try to find the good.
Yep.
And I track. What's the expression? I don't know. I'm dead. Brain dead.
We're hitting our walls.
Yeah.
Well, Ben, thank you so much for being on today again.
Thank you for having me.
Helping me to change the world so we can change the world.
Absolutely. And kudos to all the work that you've done.
Thank you.
You're changing the world.
Working on it. Right there with you, buddy.
Yeah. All right. Cheers to that. Thank you again.
All right. Have a good one. Let's talk Lion's Brain. So this is their new proprietary blend that's most healthy for your brain. So if you're looking for decreased symptoms of depression, decreased symptoms of anxiety, you want more energy, this is a great supplement. So it's all natural, has all organic products in it, B vitamins, magnesium, and a whole surplus of anti-inflammatory mushrooms, all legal, and it helps to optimize your brain health. So check out Lion's Brain.